looks like the stage is finally set for a truce between the government and Vodafone in the 12,000 crore rupee tax case. The Union Cabinet today cleared conciliation with the British telecom company, which has already served an arbitration notice. Finance Minister Chidambaram says in the event of a positive outcome, the government could make necessary amendments to the retrospective tax laws.
But Vodafone has made it clear that it will not agree to any settlement that is not cast in stone. Legal experts are also not fully convinced on the government's move, saying that there is a high probability of such a proposal being challenged in the court of law. But it's truce for the time being. The implications of the government's decision, that's our top story tonight.
If two conciliators sit together and they are wise men and women, I believe they will be, they should be able to suggest an outcome, isn't it? It's a non-binding conciliation. It's not arbitration. It's conciliation. They will suggest an outcome or a modified outcome, and both sides can say, all right, this is the best we can do, we can accept it. Then we go back to cabinet, they go back to their board. So there's a step by step. Everything is in the public domain. Everything will be transparent, and ultimately we have to go back to Parliament, and unless Parliament approves it, nothing can be done.
Removal of uncertainty is a good thing.
Vodafone will pave the way to remove one of the biggest irritants when it comes to taxation regime in India?
I think the case got a lot of publicity, and therefore clearing the case would be a good thing.
Okay, let's take it across then to ET now. Suchetna Ray, who's been tracking that story from the start. She joins in then from New Delhi for more on all of today's developments. Suchetna, finally a start to all those truce talks. But, talk to us about what happens next, how the process goes about, what kind of a timeline can we expect on these particular talks?
Tanya, it's a small step for the government that they went to the cabinet today and got its approval, but it's a giant leap when it comes to this mega tax tussle that's been going on since 2007 between the government and Vodafone, and it's 22,000 crore rupees of tax that we're talking about. As Sumit Bose, the Revenue Secretary, clarified to us, yes, the first step has been taken, and now the biggest step that has to be taken here is the appointment of a conciliator who's agreeable to both Vodafone as well as the government of India. And as Mr. P. Chidambaram, the Finance Minister, has clarified time and again, they have assured the Cabinet that at each step they will go back and seek the blessing of the Cabinet and only move forward. P. Chidambaram wants to ensure that once a conciliation or a settlement has been drawn up, it is not left to the opposition or the CAG or even public interest litigants to point fingers at the government, accusing it of biasness, and that's exactly why he has informed us today that he will take the final settlement for a ratification by the Parliament also. In fact, once the conciliator is appointed by the government, sources in North Block tell us that they will formally invite Vodafone to sit across the table and perhaps draw out the broad contours of this settlement. It's 22,000 crore that we're talking about, but it's only not the money that will come into the government's kitty that P. Chidambaram is worried about. We know that he is single-mindedly focused on clearing the air for foreign investors, on moving foreign investors to India. Remember, this has been the biggest irritant. The retrospective amendment of Section 9 has been the biggest irritant, and that's exactly why sources in the Income Tax Department tell us that they're keeping the rule book open so as to make sure amendments to various sections are done so as to ensure a settlement. This settlement, they feel, will go a long way in assuaging investor sentiment and giving the message across that India's tax regime is stable.
It's early days yet, but at least the government has made a move to look for some sort of a settlement. Suchetna Ray, thanks for reporting from New Delhi and tracking that story very closely. Let's get in a word then from the lead counsel of Vodafone, Harish Salve. Won the case for them in Supreme Court, but unfortunately today is staring at the predicament of a conciliation process that could lead to a settlement in which Vodafone will of course have to pay up. He joined us exclusively from London and believes that the government is now trying to save its own face by settling this dispute.
I think it's a sensible way forward for them to settle it, but the devil lies in the details. Till we see what kind of offer they are making, I don't think Vodafone will be in a position to respond. Sorry to say, I have no sympathy for the government. It's a predicament of their own creating, and I don't think they're doing a great gesture. I think they're trying to save their own face, but it's good. It's sensible. And even if they do the right thing after all wrong attempts, no harm. If conciliation fails, Vodafone will press ahead to the BIT. and let us see how the government responds. Nobody is willing to trust India unless you first ink a BIT. So, if the government is going to renege on the BIT, then God be with it.
Okay, let's keep it with this story and really discuss the impact and what this really means for sentiment as well. Mukesh Bhutani, who is the chairman of BMR Legal, Anu Dutt, Vodafone Council, and Swaminathan Iyer, consulting editor and ET Now, all join in on the show this evening. Many thanks, all of you, for taking time out and speaking with us. Swami, I'd like to begin by asking you, the cabinet has given its nod to conciliation. Of course, we know that none of this is binding. It's non-binding in that sense. But what's your take? Do you think that this could be legally tenable?
I don't like this development. I mean, look, you went and passed a law. Perhaps you should not have passed that law in such a hurry, or you should have settled the Vodafone case before passing the law. Once you pass the law, to make an exception after the event, to my mind, is not right policy. If you wanted to have some conciliation, I would say Vodafone should have been told, look, we've passed this law, so kindly go ahead and make the payment. But after the payment has been made, we have an agreement that in view of various mitigating circumstances, we can consider some refund. And that would have to be something in consonance with the law itself. All I can say is that what I am seeing, I don't like the idea that you pass a law which perhaps you shouldn't have passed in that particular form with that kind of retrospective effect. You first pass a defective law, and then to get over it, you are attempting to somehow sidestep the law. I have a strong feeling that, this is going to end up in litigation. Somebody will launch a public interest suit, and this thing will be struck down. These are my fears.
Okay, those fears seem legitimate. Let's bring in Mukesh Bhutani as well. Mukesh, the big concern, like Swami pointed out, is the legal validity of this entire process. The fear is that it could be a victim of a possible public interest litigation. Is that concern legitimate according to you?
Any kind of conciliation offer that is accepted both by the government and by the Vodafone may in all good intent be in the interest of the country, be in the interest of both the parties. But you cannot stop any third party from raising an issue. And an issue of this kind, the possibility of a public interest litigation coming up, in my view, is very high. Of course, it would be frivolous, but the courts have to decide that the public interest litigation is frivolous. It's not for the parties to the conciliation who have to form a judgment about such PIL being frivolous.
Fair enough. Let's also bring on board Anu Dutt, who's of course one of the counsels for Vodafone. We did hear the lead counsel, Harish Salve, as well. Anu, what next? What kind of a time frame are you looking at for the conciliation process to conclude?
These are, conciliation is not a very straight-jacketed way of doing things. It's a very informal way of trying to arrive at a amicable resolution of disputes. So it's really up to the parties, but usually 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, this is really where the time frame is normally in conciliation.
Mukesh, let me bring it to you. What would be the broad contours of the settlement, you think? Do you believe that if penalty and interest are waived off, Vodafone may actually be willing to pay the principal amount?
Well, it could be speculative on my part to comment on this, but I would imagine that as someone having gone forward and the government also having extended or accepted that offer for a conciliation, I would imagine that the least that can be done is make an offer for deletion of penalty and interest. I don't think that there is any legal case for penalty on this case, but I think that is what Vodafone would expect as the least option. And I think if the government wants to be generous and send out a positive signal, perhaps reduce the rate by 50% and charge only 50% of capital gains,
Anu, I guess then you're best equipped to answer this one. What kind of settlement is acceptable to Vodafone? Will it be ready to settle if penalty is waived off and interest reduced?
No, Vodafone, as of today, Vodafone's position is that no money is payable. But because they are doing business here, they want to see if there is any manner of finding an amicable resolution. There are no numbers as yet discussed, nothing discussed. So, that's really a little far away process at this moment.
Swami, comment on that. Like Anu says, as of today, the company's position is that they are not liable to pay anything. They have a Supreme Court backing their view as well. Why do you think they've decided to smoke the peace pipe then? They could have initiated arbitration proceedings. Do you think they did this because at one level they realized that they need to do business in India and they can't have this adversarial relationship with North Bloc?
I suspect that after so long, already they have a deal in mind. That is why they are asking for conciliation. That's why it's going to the cabinet. Nobody is specifying the details of the deal, I suspect. But I think they've already done a deal, and that's why we are seeing this.
Okay, Anu, let me toss this to you then. In a sense, do you believe Vodafone should have exercised the arbitration possibility, because you've obviously got the Supreme Court verdict in your favor? Why go in for conciliation when you could have exercised the arbitration possibility?
Well, actually Vodafone has already given a trigger notice under the treaty for arbitration, but even under the treaty you are required to see if there can be any amicable resolution. So that's what Vodafone is at the moment trying to explore, and of course we will try our best. If it doesn't happen, they'll go back to arbitration, but they do want to see if it can be resolved in any manner.
Okay, so they do want to take that risk. But Mukesh, do you believe that Vodafone was perhaps apprehensive? Because, arbitration is pretty risky. Either you lose it all or you win it all.
I think the moot point over here is whether Vodafone could have challenged the constitutional validity itself of the retrospective amendment, having won the case in the Supreme Court.
Anu, what sort of changes are required then to the law amended in Parliament for this conciliation process?
See, conciliation does not require any amendment of law, but if the conciliation leads to some amicable resolution, that will be binding only once the Parliament approves.
Okay, let's talk about the big picture then. Swami, let me bring you in, because the view in North Bloc is that this settlement is being done with an eye on reviving investor sentiment. Is that going to happen? Do you buy that argument?
It would be very wrong, in my view, to have a conciliation with one particular party to lift investor sentiment. I mean, it would be completely open to accusations of cronyism. It would be a form of cronyism. If you want to lift the stock market, as the lawyer said, why not have a policy statement made on saying that, notwithstanding the provisions in the law, in practice we are only going to apply this prospectively. Suppose you made a statement like that, it would be a policy matter, it would affect everybody. It would not be a favor to one particular company or group. I think that is the way you need to go about it.
Fair enough. Anu, comment on that. How would you react to those comments from Swami? Do you believe that this conciliation process and a possible settlement at the end of it all could indeed lift investor sentiment?
See, according to me, I have always maintained that the best way to lift investor sentiment is to make retrospective amendment prospective. That's really where the mood will be right, to show to the foreign investors that yes, even if we made a mistake, we are willing to rectify. We have a policy which is consistent. We want people to invest into India. We are not going to change policies midway. We will not upset Supreme Court judgments so lightly. But if the government is not willing to go that far, then maybe this is a starting process, and it may. I mean, I'm not sure how much it will, but definitely it's one positive mood.